Okay, Shalom Akim, Kahalayim La Yahabashim Yashab, Hashim Rakha Kodash, double honest to Grams and Apostles, Thadi Al Thadi Yashab for the strength in order to make this video. And the answers are you find this video edifying and exhorting. Edifying meaning to build up, exhort meaning to encourage. So, Yaratazar, this will be a video that's to the point because the message is easy to comprehend. But as I named it, I'll just read it out here. So, we are Israelites, world without end. And that really refers back to this scripture. And I'll read it now. This is Isaiah 45 and 17. But Israel shall be saved in the Lord Yahweh with an everlasting salvation. Ye shall not be ashamed nor confounded, world without end. And of course, it's through Yahweh Shai. That's how we're going to get that salvation. You know, of whom, when we, of course, endure to the very end, will then be taken up into those chariots. Hence the strangeness of his salvation mentioned in Wisdom of Solomon chapter 5. Into those chariots, and of course that's when the crowning ceremony would then be done. So the key phrase here says, "Ye shall not be ashamed nor confounded, world without end." I read in the NLT as well. It says, "But the Lord Yahweh will save the people of Israel with eternal salvation throughout everlasting ages. They will never again be humiliated and disgraced." And that's when we enter into the kingdom of Yahushua, because he's the one of whom will be our salvation. That eternal salvation is really referring to Yahushua. You know, because again, even his name, you know, Yahushua, you know, means he saves. You know, so the inspiration read for this video is this clip that I'm about to play. Yaratazar, if it goes silent, it means that, of course, YouTube put the copyright thing. But Yaratazar, that won't happen. But we'll see. I'm going to play it nevertheless. Just for some context before I play the clip. It's a series on Amazon Prime called Invincible. As you can see here, that yellow writing, Invincible, that's the name of the series on Amazon Prime. Which is really based, I'm gonna just focus on certain parts. I'm not going to summarize the whole thing. But there's a nation, or there's a race of people called the Viltrumites. You know, obviously for older Akim or younger brothers as myself, you know, who are into Dragon Ball Z, you could liken the Viltrumites a little bit as the saying, but I'll say the Viltrumites, in terms of mentality, are more brutal, you know, ruthless when it comes to judgment. You know, so really in their mindset, you know, the other races really see them as, you know, again, brutal and ruthless. The same way Israel, when it comes to our ways of judgment, they're going to call us brutal. They're going to call us ruthless. They won't really be able to comprehend the severity of which we will execute, you know, the judgments of Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. So anyways, to the point, Viltrumites really represents the Israelites. And of course, there's many ways that you can interpret this if you've got a spiritual eye as well. So I'll play it now.
In the time since the virus first struck, we still have no treatment or cure, and no knowledge of who created it. It has finally slowed, but only because all remaining Viltrumites have been infected. A remaining population are the few who have recovered. But even the survivors suffer a dangerous period of reduced strength, resilience, and regeneration.
How many are dead?
The number is quite...
Do not make me ask you twice.
Billions upon billions. But it is worse than that. With so few of us remaining, any offspring will be inbred and deficient. It is the end of our race, Regent.
No, you are wrong. We will honor our fallen, rebuild ourselves at any cost, and destroy those who thought they could extinguish us. We are Viltrumites. We are without end.
soon as the Grand Regent, which was the leader of those Viltrumites, mentioned "we are without end," that triggered the scripture to come out in my mind of Isaiah 45 and verse 17, which I read at the beginning of this video. Because yes, Israelites are a world, within themselves, without end. It's not talking about the whole earth, all the heathen nations all together. No, it's talking, when it mentions world, it's talking about a group of people. So in this case, he said, Viltrumites, we are without end. The same way, that really represents Israelites. Hence why I named the video, We Are Israelites, World Without End. Which really, they got it from the scriptures anyways. These writers and directors, it's all the inspiration of Yahweh Shem Yahushua that's put within their minds to create these shows. And first of all, this was a comic before it was made into a show too. I didn't even know that until recently. So that's the point right there. Because again, just to explain the scene, there was a virus going on that someone sent. I won't spoil the show too much, but I'll just talk as brief as I can. So there was a virus sent, to kill the Viltrumites. But of course, those of whom were stronger, the result was just to weaken them. Well, the consequence was weakening their system. And of course, billions died, hence the ring around their planet here. Those are all bodies that's orbiting the planet. And as a result of this, one of their generals, I'm trying to rewind it. One of their generals, let me get a good, yeah, that guy. General Craig, which is his name, said it's the end of our race. But Thrag, he said, no, you're wrong. He said with absolute conviction, which is true. I'm going to get some precepts on it soon. But, Thrag said, no, you're wrong. We are world without... You see, now I'm quoting the scriptures because that's the truth. It's the scriptures. But we are without end. That's what it is. The same way Israelites are without end. No matter what scheming Esau Edom does, no matter what tactics these heathen nations come together, to affect us or try and weaken us, as it says within Psalms 2. I'm going to get that too. It won't work out. They will fail. They're destined to fail. And we should know that as a fact. So it just inspired me to make this video because, as soon as he mentioned we are without end, it's scriptural, man. So let me get a precept. This is Psalms 2 and verse 1. Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves and rulers take counsel together against the Lord Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushua, and against his anointed, so against us, saying, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh, and the Lord Yahweh shall have them in derision. So of course they have their secret councils saying how we're going to create things in order to weaken them. Because in the series, of course, I have to speak on it right now because it just it makes sense to do it. But if you want to watch it, it's on Amazon Prime. It's called Invincible, and you see what I mean when it comes to the Viltrumites representing the Israelites, especially their mindset, man. Their mindset is very severe. This is a thing that I like about the show. So anyway, so whatever council that these heathen nations, Esau, Edom, comes together to have to scheme against Israel, they will fail. That's the point. We are without end. We are the world without end, as mentioned in Isaiah 45 and verse 17. It reminds me of that time, because in the show they call it the scourge virus. Some kind of a virus of which cleared them out, the Viltrumites, billions upon billions. It's the same way Esau Edom was working on, the V to put within, Jake, so that it can then harm them more than the other heathen nations, because it is possible to genetically, genetically modify, but I think there's a better word to say it, or to. Well, yeah, I'm gonna just say that for a lack of a better way of saying it, but okay, I'll say biologically modify their vials, to target certain nations. In other words, to target Israelites. So that's what that reminded me of as well. Esau, Edom creating the V, to target us. You so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native American Indians, and of course, on the other heathen nations, it will have no effect upon them. So it's the same way that scourge virus was used to clear out a whole load of Viltrumites. It's the same way Esau, Edom was planning to clear out a whole load of Israelites as well. Which, nevertheless, if you want to get into another meaning as well of that clearance, you could liken it as the 2/3 of actually a better way, not even the virus, a better way, because before that there was actually a purging that happened, which was to remove the weak of the Viltrumites, the weak ones of the Viltrumites. So there was like a great purge, which they had to fight each other, and that halved the population. So the same way that purge was going out, that also reminded me of the scriptures too. Because that virus as well, if you liken it to today's age or to the scriptures, that virus can be likened as Yahweh Shem Yahshua clearing up the 2/3 and the wicked Israelites across the world. Because the 2/3 are within America, Babylon. Of course, the other wicked Israelites that don't want to obey Yahweh will be slayed as well. In fact, let me get this. Should be, yeah. So this is what's going to happen. I read the way they portray the Viltrumite Empire is very, very close to how Israelites will be in the kingdom, or how Israelites are. So, hold on, let me see. All right, verse 27, Luke 19 and 27. It says, "But those mine enemies, which would not that I should reign over them, bring hither and slay them before me." So when Yahushua comes back, and of course, we descends from those chariots onto earth again, Jerusalem coming down, as it says in Revelation 21, and we're gonna go around the earth. I would say we're gonna say, choose ye this day, whom you will serve. And when we say that, those wicked Israelites, of course, 2/3 would have already been cleared out from America by then, because America would still be on fire. But of course, with these wicked Israelites out there, we're gonna say, choose ye this day, whom you will serve. We're basically gonna tell them, all right, it's either you serve Yahweh Shem Yahshua and you submit, or you die and you're reborn later on. I'm just gonna be straight up with it. So this is Joshua 24 and 15. Joshua 24 and verse 15. "And if it seem evil unto you to serve the Lord Yahweh, but Hashem Yahushua, choose you this day whom you will serve, whether the powers which your fathers served, that were on the other side of the flood, or the gods of the Amorites, or those land, or Amorites in whose land ye dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord Yahweh Shem Yahushua." So of course, we're just going to go around, and them wicked Israelites that want to still serve their idols, they'll be slayed. The same way Yahushua said, "But those my enemies, which would not that I should reign over them." So anyone against Yahushua ruling, it says that I should reign over them, bring hither and slay them before me. And that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do, man. Let me read in the NLT. It says, "And as for these enemies of mine who didn't want me to be their king, bring them in and execute them right here in front of me." And that's something about the Viltrumite Empire as well. They were pretty much not pretty much. They were and they are a dominating race. They were dominating the universe, man. All the other alien races, they were dominating them. They had slaves, they had servants, and of course they were brutal in their manner of of rulership as well. You know, they had that sovereign mindset, especially that guy called Thrag, you know, the Grand Regent. You know, he was a ruler of the Viltrumites too. But when you get into this, the story is actually quite interesting. Very interesting. Right, so let's get a precept here. And that's the mindset we ought to have as well, because we will be ruling over these heathens. Just because right now we're on a lower level, and of course disrespect is given, it doesn't mean that we should lose all hope. Especially, really, the fact that we've been given hope from Yahweh Shem Yahushua, really, we have a very sweet expectation. We don't have to be in a lowly mind state. And if it be so that you have those moments, you know, think upon the things of which are good, you know, to give you strength. These scriptures. Psalms 23 and 23. Surely there is no enchantment against Jacob. There is neither is there any divination against Israel. According to this time it shall be said of Jacob, of Israel, what hath the Most High wrought? So again, key phrase here, it says there's no enchantment against Jacob. In the NLT I read this, it says that no curse can touch Jacob, of course apart from the ones of which Yahweh has ordained, but that's for a period of time. But you know, it says no curse can touch Jacob. You know, anyone who may think that, oh, they can use witchcraft to affect us, especially those of us in this truth, man. You know, the left hand side is weaker than the right hand side. End of. So no curse can touch Jacob, no magic has any power against Israel. For now it will be said of Jacob, what wonders the Most High has done of Israel. So really that shows us that, especially those of us that know this precept as well, that are aware of these scriptures, that are in this truth, we don't have anything to fear of this world. The only fear that we have is of Yahweh and Yahweh Shai. That's really it. You know, everything of the world, all it is just to try and hinder us and weaken us, whether it be spiritually or mentally. But once you know about these precepts, once you meditate upon them, which is our strength, it's the words of Yahweh Shem Yahushua that strengthens us. That alone just fortifies us in the spirit. Of course, combined with prayer, combined with fasting, and that's it, man. That's how you raise up your strength spiritually. You gotta believe in these precepts because they are facts. Don't let any old Joe don't let any old Joe try and deceive you and say, oh, you believe in the Bible? You know, as Esau would say, what a load of bullocks. If he believes this bullshit, that's him. He's gonna receive his judgment. But that shouldn't sway how you think. It should sway your convictions in this truth. Speaking of convictions, let's get this. The NLT describes it good, but I'm going to read both. Romans 14 and 22. Hast thou faith? Have it to thyself before the Most High. Happy is he that condemneth not himself in that thing which he alloweth, and he that doubteth is damned if he eat, because he eateth not of faith, for whatsoever is not of faith is sin. Just to make a clearer meaning, this is the NLT. You may believe there's nothing wrong with what you are doing, which what we are doing, servants of Yahushua, there is nothing wrong with it. We know it. Of course, we're teaching, we're preaching as we're commanded through the scriptures to do. And we have our convictions on striving for that crowning ceremony, striving for that salvation. Now it says, nothing wrong with what you're doing, but keep it between yourself and the Most High. Blessed are those who don't feel guilty doing something they have decided is right. And of course, we know what we're doing is right. That's why, despite family members, despite so-called friends of the world, or just colleagues that you may be working with in the workplace, you know, whatnot, try and sway you in terms of your beliefs, you know, we're rock solid strong, man. We're rooted in this truth. And anyone who tries to waver us, they'll just be growing weaker and weaker and weaker as we get stronger and stronger and stronger. Any force of attack that comes against us, it will be in vain and it will be worthless. You know, like throwing a flipping I'm trying to describe this right. It's like shooting an arrow, but before it even touches you, it just weakens in terms of its acceleration. So that's one way of perceiving it. To the point where it does not touch us, it doesn't even come near us. So yeah, it says, but keep it between yourself and the Most High. Not everyone needs to know, man. You know, don't cast your pearls onto swine. Even Israelites can be likened to swine, because remember, they serve idols, they disrespect and are disobedient to Yahweh Shem Yahshua. Their eyes have not been opened, so what we see, of course, don't expect them to understand. Hence why it's good for us to also not tell every single person. You know, again, be wise as serpents, harmless as doves. Verse 23, Romans 14:23. But if you have doubts about whether or not you should eat something, you are sinning if you go ahead and do it, for you are not following your convictions. Which again, I'll just finish the series of Joseph being an example of having conviction. And conviction is a firmly held belief. Our convictions are based upon these scriptures. If you do anything you believe is not right, you are sinning. And of course, typically, that what people call instinct is really, you know, spiritual programming from Yahweh Shem Yahushua. For those of us in this truth, it's Harachah Kodash, which is again the collection of angels that guides us in order to know what to do, what to say, how to behave, and really in all manner of ways as we live this life. So that's there, man, you know, in terms of not swaying. And the Viltrumites, going back to the topic, the Viltrumites, they had a very strong level of conviction, man. You know, they had that unity as well, but it was through strength, man. But it was a beautiful thing to see in the show, man. But yeah, let's see. Speaking of world, let me get this. Should be 2nd Ezra 8. Yep, this is 2nd Ezra 8 and verse 1. And he answered me, saying, the Most High hath made this world for many, but the world to come for few. So that scourge virus again from the clip, which eliminated all the Viltrumites, you know, that can be likened as all the wicked Israelites, the 2/3, Zechariah 13 and verse 8, being cleared out of America for the 2/3. And of course, the wicked Israelites that don't want to obey Yahushua, they're going to be brought forth to Yahushua and they'll be slain. Luke 19 and verse 27. So again, hence the few. And it's true, after the purge, and then after the scourge virus as well, there were very few Viltrumites that were left, but nevertheless, and the Viltrumites are very strong people, hence why the other nations, the other alien races, they feared them the same way they would fear us in the kingdom of Yahushua. And it's only just going to get higher and higher and higher, man, when it comes to their fear towards Jake. So once again, 2nd Ezra 8 and 1. And he answered me, saying, the Most High hath made this world for many, but the world to come for few. So yeah, that's it, man. Because really, we're the ones that are supposed to rule over them. We're the ones given the commandments, you know, in order to be a wise and understanding people, as it says in Deuteronomy 4, about verse 5 to 8. You know, Yahweh says I'll get right now. So this is Deuteronomy 4 and verse 5. Behold, I have taught you statutes and judgments, even as the Lord Yahweh my power commanded me, that ye should do so in the land whither ye go to possess it. Keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations, which shall hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. And that's how we're going to be. That's how we're going to rule over the heathen. You know, they ain't going to have any choice either. All right, I'm going to end off here with this precepts. Isaiah 40 and 15. Behold, the nations are as a drop of a bucket, and are counted as a small dust of the balance. Behold, he taketh up the hours as a very little thing. In other words, the other nations are worthless. I remember there was one thing, Omni-Man, which was one of the early characters of the show. You know, he's quite a cool character there. He said he mentioned the humans, which the humans were lacking as the other heathen nations. In terms of representation. The humans are as insects. That's what they are. The same way we view them right here, as the scriptures have said, as a drop of a bucket, essentially a droplet of water. They're insignificant. That's the mindset that we ought to have. Of course, day to day, we have our respects. But in our minds, we know their innate value. As Yahweh has said here, within the scriptures, within these words, behold, the nations are as a drop of a bucket, and are counted as small dust of the balance. Behold, he taketh up the hours as a very little thing. And the thing is, you can get into your emotions for anyone who may be new seeing this. But you should go into the history of how these other nations have treated us. So if a Jake had a mindset of seeing these other nations as insignificant, spittle, as it says in Second Ezra's, I believe 6 and verse 56. They're liking a spittle, a piece of spit, saliva. And over here, it talks about them being as a droplet of water. If a Jake has that type of mindset, that's fine. Of course, operate in wisdom, because there's a time for everything. We all have to be patient and play our roles until the time comes where the green light turns on. And then, and only then, in the kingdom of Yahweh, of course prior to that as well, because of spiritual power, that's when these heathens will feel pain. That's when they're gonna have to submit. And they won't have a choice either. So I'm gonna play the clip, and Yaratazar, just leave it at that. So Shalom, Yabashim Yashai, Barakatham. And double honors to great and apostles and elder bishops of Great Millstone. Shalom.
In the time since the virus first struck, we still have no treatment or cure, and no knowledge of who created it. It has finally slowed, but only because all remaining Viltrumites have been infected. A remaining population are the few who have recovered. But even the survivors suffer a dangerous period of reduced strength, resilience, and regeneration.
How many are dead?
The number is quite...
Do not make me ask you twice.
Billions upon billions. But it is worse than that. With so few of us remaining, any offspring will be inbred and deficient. It is the end of our race, Regent.
No, you are wrong. We will honor our fallen, rebuild ourselves at any cost, and destroy those who thought they could extinguish us. We are Viltrumites. We are without end.
Shalom.